Excellent. Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 5 of Innovation Week 2025. My name is James Downey, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today on our final day of Innovation Week. And what a week it's been. We started off the week with talking about the importance of making the right decision as you kind of transition to the cloud with Tracy Pepe. That was a great discussion there around the PA SaaS versus PA cloud offering from IBM and how they're fit for purpose and how do you kind of approach those kind of discussions. And then we kind of jumped into a discussion around visual excellence as we kind of looked at what we call like elite planning analytics workspace, and we also kind of looked at also the next gen or so Applico UX, and actually looked at that as an alternative to workspace where you want to kind of go beyond some of the constraints that workspace does pose. But again, really doubling down on the importance of having efficient design for your applications and presenting that to end users to build trust and to improve the user adoption of your applications and how critical that is. And then on Wednesday, we dived into the AI with Planning Analytics, specifically Gen AI, and wasn't that a successful session there, Stephen? Where we had some great attendance, great engagement. We've had some really good buzz straight after that session, which is really good. People reaching out to do proof of concepts, which we really welcome that. Again, how does Gen AI, specifically Watson X integration with Planning Analytics, and how that can kind of really scale and work for the enterprise. And then yesterday, we dived into one of my personal favorite topics, and that's all around high-performing applications. And when we're talking about that, we're kind of like narrowing that kind of conversation a bit down to more around data transfer within planning analytics, or bringing data movement into planning analytics, or data movement in planning analytics. And we're kind of looking at Rush TI Pro, which Nicholas was discussing, and we're going to talk a bit about that a bit more today with Marius and Nicholas and Stephen. And then, of course, today, our final day for Innovation Week 2025, this is the global launch of Atmosphere, and we have Marius with us, we have Stephen, we have Nicholas, and it's great to have you all joining us here on stage. And for those of you who are going to be asking some questions and things like that, please put them in the chat. We'll be sharing information, sharing links. We want to engage with you and have a discussion as we kind of go through. Obviously, if there's things we can't get to, we will follow up on. All of the recordings will be kind of sent out automatically post the close of the webinar. And then additionally, all of the Innovation Week 2025 recordings will be moved to YouTube under the Cubewise channel, hopefully by the end of next week. So, looking forward to kind of getting up all that content out there. Alrighty, so before I pass it across to Marius to talk about, what is Atmosphere and why is this so exciting, just a quick plug for the year ahead. For those of you who are going to be able to kind of get up to Boston for Think 2025, the Cubewise team will be there, and hopefully we get to see quite a few of you. If you are going, please reach out. It'd be great to kind of catch up and talk all things planning analytics. Additionally, the Cubewise team will be at Tech Exchange in Orlando in October, and we'll be there, in good numbers like we were last year. And so we're really looking forward to having a number of presentations there. We're bringing back the TM1 World Championships, and hopefully we're going to be on the main stage. I see Hubert's on the line. Maybe we can kind of get Hubert up there with Ben doing a few quizzes. That'd be kind of fun. It was a great event last year, to be fair, in Las Vegas, and we want to make it that much better this year. So again, that's some things ahead. So Marius, all that said and done, great to see you. And how are things? And I guess here's the leading question: what have you been up to? What's the big announcement today?
Hey, good to be here. What I've been up to is TM1py, I guess. My role in Cubewise is to jump between the offices, between the regions, and help our colleagues and our customers to make the most of TM1py. And that's what I do day-to-day basis. And I think we've seen two really big use cases of TM1py in the last 3-4 years. That's AI and data integration. Everyone talks about AI, but data integration is also important. And from what I can say, there's even more use of TM1py for integrating TM1 with cloud stuff than there is of TM1py for AI. And that brings me to, that's the origin story of Atmosphere.
Excellent. And, in terms of Atmosphere, for those of you who are on the line and maybe a little bit newer to that, just to set it up here a bit further, Atmosphere has been a Cubewise innovation that has been, I guess, incubated in the North, generally speaking, in the North American market. And there's been some innovations elsewhere in Europe and Australia with Atmosphere. And I guess today we have the opportunity here at Innovation Week 2025 to kind of announce that it is now globally available as a Cubewise Code product. Which is a huge achievement there. I don't know, Stephen, similarly, you've been kind of, and Nicholas, you've been part of this kind of journey as well. What's kind of like your kind of read and around Atmosphere, and why it's important, Stephen, in terms of it's the opportunity that it presents to customers?
Yeah, I mean, if you think historically a little bit around what we've had to do from a data integration perspective, you had ODBC drivers or flat files, and when you were on-prem, there wasn't really a problem with that because you'd be able to connect and manage your own infrastructure and deal with moving data between points internal to your network to points internal to your network. As organizations have gone more cloud ERPs, there's had to be different types of solutions in order to do that. So you'd have sort of separate capabilities to pull data from cloud ERPs and tons of sort of different points of integration that you would have to do. And so with something like Atmosphere, it really simplifies the process for you to be able to go and pull data and frankly, make it faster for you to get there and sort of get up to scale on actually moving your data from, your ERPs or your different other data systems into your planning analytics model and vice versa too, right? I mean, I think, you can talk a little bit here, Marius, around how you can sort of move things back and forth. It's not just one way, going from, your ERP into planning analytics, but you can go from planning analytics backwards into, something like a Snowflake.
Yeah, let me comment on that. I think the future is in the cloud, and the future is also multi-cloud, right? We'll see that most organizations will have more than one cloud provider, and that's what Atmosphere tries to help with specifically for TM1. So like you said, data has to move across the systems. We've seen cases where slowly changing dimensions that live in TM1 need to be bursted out to data lakes or blob file storages or something. We see this as a requirement coming up all the time, and writing a Python script each time, a unique one, made sense at the time. But Atmosphere is the idea to have something pre-built that's available as a service and that just works.
Yeah, that's a good call. And Nicholas, you've had some experience, hands-on keyboard with Atmosphere quite a bit in the US, kind of, V12 and V11 and on cloud and on-prem. So what's your kind of comment here, and why are you kind of excited as well as being part of the Atmosphere innovation incubation here? Why is this interesting for you?
Well, I think there are multiple things. I mean, the nerdy in me would say it's interesting because it is interesting because it's really fun to actually work with it. But from a business standpoint, which is where we're here today to discuss, I think one of the key things, and I agree with Marius when he says, the future is cloud, and that's completely true. We all know it, but the cloud is still a bit of an unknown to many of us, and the solutions that are out there are still a bit unknown, right? So is Snowflake good for me? Is it Databricks? Is it this or that? And to try it out, I mean, acquiring that service is easier than ever today, right? But integrating it wasn't. And so you would be getting it, but in order to actually test it, if it suits your purpose, you have to develop everything on yourself to then figure out that maybe that was not the solution for you. Well, I think this is where Atmosphere is super great, because you can test your services and you can, you can connect and you don't have to spend a lot of money on that. You could use pre-built connectors that just work, and you can test all of your solutions. And I think that checks whole boxes in terms of development. It's a ton of work that you don't have to do anymore because you never wanted to. You just wanted to connect, and that's sort of the key piece.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point there. And I guess there's there's a lot of, at times there can be increasing complexity with those data integration endpoints, don't you think, Stephen? Especially around like, things like security. I know when we kind of met with some of the IBM product management recently, we were kind of like presenting Atmosphere and, in relation to kind of V12, because of, the V12 integration is a great kind of use case as it is for V11, but that V12 kind of integration with Atmosphere and the security complexity and and managing the keys. Anything you want to kind of add on that to kind of build on that, the value proposition of Atmosphere, which you think of it as like pre-built connectors, but it is more than that, as in the calculations that it can provide and also the report burst. But Stephen, you want to kind of just build on that about
absolutely. I mean, the security conversation is, we're in 2025, right? Security is everything, right? If you can't secure your data, what are you doing? And so, one of the advantages of Atmosphere, and I think, Marius is going to touch on this in a little bit, right? But really the ability to be able to use sort of the key stores and the security managers that are available to us in sort of proven out technology such as Amazon and AWS's deployment. To that second point that you were talking about there, James, I mean, there's a lot of other capabilities here, right? Once you start thinking about like I can do things like move my data from point A to point B in the from cloud to cloud, that also opens the ability for you to do things like what we were talking about a little bit yesterday with Rush TI Pro, right? Where you can actually leverage the same technology to be able to provide functions within your model, right? To do things better, even without going cloud to cloud, right? All within one cloud. Once you start connecting into that, it really opens up a door of capabilities that, you can start sort of going down, right? So, it's beyond just, we talk about integration and that's a great point, right? But it's beyond that, right? I think you guys did a call actually last year on an Innovation Week talking about the calculation engine, right? And the calculation model that is embedded in Atmosphere that you can leverage within your planning analytics model today. So, it's more than just integrations, but it's also integrations, right? So there's a lot to it there.
And you're right. This is kind of and Marius, you want to maybe like share? Let's kind of get into some architecture and presentation. Let's kind of like jump into this. But as you said, yes, there's the pre-built connectors, which for all of us who are on the call who are very familiar with planning analytics, the advantages of having these pre-built connections, Snowflake, Databricks, NetSuite, SAP, all that great stuff. We want to talk about that. We want to innovate that. We also want to incubate it. There are a library of connectors that we've built to date, and we want to kind of expand that library. And if people are on the line and they see a data source that is on the list, and their data source isn't there, we'd love to kind of engage with you and prototype, incubate, and share some know-how with you and kind of on that to help expand this really great library that Marius and team have put together. So, Marius, let's kind of walk into this architecture slide and kind of like, at the high level, explain what we've solved here and the complexity and why this is so exciting.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's a good moment to talk about architecture and then see it in action, see what it can do. So Atmosphere is available as a service. It means, especially if you're on PAOC, TM1 in the cloud, it's very light touch. You don't have to install anything. You can subscribe to it as a service, and you can call it from a TI process. So think of Atmosphere doing all the hard work, connecting to your Snowflake, your Databricks, your Salesforce, your Azure cloud, or like in this example in Salesforce, Atmosphere's extracting the data, transforming it, and then loading it into TM1. And it does that with obviously we're using TM1py. And we're using the AWS cloud stack. So it's all the standard, industry standard components that you would use for a modern cloud application, like the AWS Secrets Manager, Lambda functions, the API gateway.
So you have Salesforce on here, Marius, but what if I don't have Salesforce or I have something else, right? Is it locked into a specific set of other cloud options, or like what other things might I be able to do here?
So we get to that list of functions in a bit. We have a nice collection of functions pre-built, and you can subscribe to the ones that you need. Like if you have Salesforce and Snowflake, then this demo will be perfect for you. If you have Databricks and something else, then we still have something for you. But we are essentially we're building a like you said, a library of functions, and you can subscribe to the one you need.
And this is a two-way street?
Yes. For Salesforce, we do write back. We do write back for Snowflake and Databricks as well. We don't do it on all of the systems. For instance, we have a connector to D365 where we only extract. We have a connector to Zero that only extracts. So it's depending on the connector, but yeah, for Salesforce, yes, we do write back.
Right. And you said there's like easy to deploy there. I guess that's the kind of increasingly, when we're kind of engaging with customers as an example to do proof of concepts, proof of technology, the ease of installation is so advantageous to all parties. You can kind of really get bogged down a little bit with complex or installing things on local infrastructure, getting it installed, the security, the conversation. It can be quite an extensive process, and sometimes it's not. But sometimes it can be. But again, that easy deployment here, and I know Nicholas, when you've kind of deployed Atmosphere for a large, I guess, government-esque organization here in the US, and they had Databricks, I believe, from the kind of connectivity. Do you want to and they were on V12 as well. Do you want to just touch on, as Marius maybe gets into the demo as well, like the ease of deployment there and some of the things that you really liked about Atmosphere from a technical perspective there?
Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, it was super easy to deploy, especially when the customer was in V12, because as many of you know, V12 has now a function to execute HTTPS requests. Worth mentioning, this is not just for V12. This works with V11 as well. But it was straightforward actually to deploy. There were, on the IBM side, many of you probably have, whoever are in IBM Cloud, you have whitelisting, so Atmosphere can provide you with a static IP that you just whitelist, and you can get into IBM. It's pretty much the same method on the other endpoint side. So if you have Salesforce or if you have Snowflake, installation is super smooth, and it allowed us to directly focus on how do we process the data. Right, that was pretty much the next step, and it was immediate as opposed to what would have been in the past with trying to get through the squirrels of connectivity. We're also giving the power to the client to manage their secrets. They're stored in a super secure way. They have the TIs to update all the secrets as they want, the connection details. So and now what Marius is going to show you is how that is. It has a nice looking interface finally for the clients to go through. I'll leave that up to you, Marius, to show.
Thanks. I just wanted to comment on one point that you made, James, that the no installation approach is convenient also for trials and POCs, right? The customer is evaluating new software. We can very easily prove that to move data across, and it has different authentication, like sort of like modes implemented. So for instance, with Snowflake, it can log in through an SSH private key, or just a basic username and password. So that stuff's all taken care of, and it allows like us as TM1 people to build TM1 models. Nico, this is what you mentioned earlier. This is the a window into the connections. So as you've seen in the slide before, Atmosphere uses the AWS Secrets Manager, but you as a TM1 administrator, you need to eventually sometimes register connections. And so in my case, I've got 3 connections, Salesforce, Snowflake, and TM1. And I named them very creatively. I named them Salesforce, Snowflake, and TM1. And here at the top, you can register new connections if you have to. They have a connection type, and you can you can ping them or test the connection. So if you register a new TM1 connection or a new connection to Snowflake, you register it here, and then it you can test it, make sure it works before you use it in an actual load.
And this could actually support multiple environments, right? Like you're dev for Snowflake, dev for Salesforce, etc.
Exactly. That's why, like ideally, you give them better names. You call this one a Snowflake prod or, yeah, something like that. Okay, so we've got 3 connections ready. Now let's load some data into TM1. So here we're seeing Arc. It's a great tool to do TM1. Since last week, it also has an Arc add-in and an Atmosphere add-in, which, like I said, it serves like a window into Atmosphere, because Atmosphere is hosted in the cloud, and this allows you to interact with it in a more convenient way. All right. So the first thing we have to do is to deploy the TI processes, because when you call Atmosphere, you'd normally do it from a TI process. And for the Salesforce to TM1 load, we don't have the processes yet in our model. So here's a button, create processes. I'm selecting the function that I want to deploy, and now it should only take 4 or 5 seconds, and then Atmosphere will deploy the relevant TI processes in my model. And so now if I refresh the table here on the right, you'll see that there are 3 processes on the right, and on the left, you can see all the functions that are available to my tenant.
Marius, I'm assuming that you can do this without Arc as well, right? Obviously, we're pro Arc here, but you know, I'm assuming if you're just a Paul customer or you don't have Arc, you can buy it. But if you don't have that, how would you go about doing the same exercise?
Yeah, exactly. It would just work. Everything that I do here, you can do with TI. Our colleague Andrew Layton, he did a nice demo the other day, connecting from using PAW as a UI, loading data from Salesforce. And yes, that just works. I saw just a question in the chat, which I'd like to answer before we move on with the demo.
Please.
What I think it asks, why not just use ODBC? And the answer is most of the connectors we build, they don't allow ODBC, because ODBC is a bit legacy. A lot of like modern cloud tools like Salesforce, they just don't have an ODBC API anymore. And so ODBC, it's just quite often it's simply not available anymore. So it's not an option.
And just on that note, like, you know, obviously ODBC is, you know, tried and tested. And I know when I was kind of growing up with TM1, like ODBC was the thing, right? Like it was very much an on-premise deployment. You know, for me 10 years ago when I was learning planning analytics as a consultant, as an example. But, you know, as we kind of like, and to share a bit further, you know, there's countless kind of like RFPs that we participate in here at Cubewise, and increasingly there are these kind of, you know, discussions with you know, enterprise IT folks where, you know, they do not want to be connecting to their data sources using ODBC. You know, it can be explicitly called out, and that's I guess to your point there. You know, ODBC has been great, but it is a legacy approach, and there's more elegant, more efficient ways to do things, and you know, Atmosphere is, I guess, addressing that need.
Yeah,
and so
one thing
especially that, please.
Oh, sorry. One thing I would add is that ODBC, like in the V12 realm, that's no longer an option, right? And even though ODBC, aside from that piece, it has a limitation in terms of tunnels. One of the great things about Atmosphere is you can call this in parallel, and you can exceed by far all the limitations in terms of the tunnel that the ODBC gives you, and you can do things much faster.
Yeah, and to sort of an example of that, right? So for a lot of people who were on-prem and went over to the early days of planning analytics on cloud, you had to do the satellite connector or whatever they were calling it back then in order to be able to source and even use ODBC in planning analytics on cloud. That tool has obviously now been sunset, and for, you know, V11 there are ways you can do that to continue to use ODBC, but as IBM transitions towards, you know, V12 and sort of the more modern approach to data integrations using REST API components, ODBC and its relevance, I guess you could say, to high performing applications is going to become less and less, where something like Atmosphere can help facilitate that REST API approach.
Thanks. I'll move on with the demo, but please interrupt me anytime if there are questions in the chat. So this is the accounts objects in Salesforce. And don't worry, James, this is not production, right? This is a sandbox environment. This is all the customers with a technical ID number, annual revenue, some more properties. And so what Atmosphere allows us to do is to load that into a dimension in the most efficient and elegant way. Well, let's switch back to Arc here. This is remember, this is just a TI process. So I'm calling it manually, but you could call that from a chore, from another TI process, from an action button. It is really modular, right? The TI processes, they're typically the smallest building blocks of TM1 model development. So you could use them anywhere you want. And I would just execute this process. I've already pre-filled the parameters. So we have to pass the TM1 connection. This is the one we registered before. We have to pass the Salesforce connection. And then we have to tell Salesforce what we want. And this is a query essentially saying, give us all the standard fields from the account object. And then we have to specify what is the name of the dimension in TM1. And this is optional. If you want, you can specify which column should be used as the element name. By default, it'll use the first one, which is this technical Salesforce ID. It's not very pretty, so we'll use the name instead. And that's what we meant with like no code / low code, right? Compared to the alternative, scripting your own, this is very low code. So it already completed very, very fast. It should take no more than 10 seconds for extracting, transforming, loading. And now if we look at the dimensions here and search for Salesforce, and we have to refresh, now there's a Salesforce account. So this is the one that we just brought across, and it has the same names. And here in Arc, if you look at all the attributes, there's a lot more. Just Salesforce only displays like 15 maximum. So there's your data in TM1. And one more thought on this: we offer you 3 processes, and we don't want to tell you how you develop your TM1 model. So I personally I like the idea of staging cubes, staging dimensions. So you could just drop it into a kind of staging dimension. But if you want it in a blob file, you can do that too, and then consume it with a TI process. So that's again Atmosphere trying to be very modular and trying to fit your specific needs for your like individual TM1 model. That's the first demo.
Yeah, and that's a really good point there about the modular approach, and this can obviously be deployed for new models, but also existing models. In terms of there's different approaches there, like data acquisition, bring them data into the planning analytics kind of like ecosystem, and then maybe to your point, like different models are going to maybe they've got staging cubes, maybe they don't, and there's kind of different approaches to all of that, which they can all be right. They're just going to be different, and then how you kind of like you brought the data in, and then how you ingest that into your kind of more like end user models, end user orientated models there is important, because as models scale as well, you do want to have separation, you do want to have some segregation there, because and you also want to kind of have your kind of calculation engine of planning analytics separate to your reporting cubes and separate to where the end users are typically running their reports and have their data entry screens. So I think it's a really important thing there. The Atmosphere, yes, for new models, but also it's a great fit for some of those existing models for a more elegant, more efficient way to bring data in with more contemporary kind of standards as an approach. And maybe your next demo here. There's a question there from I think it was Matthew there, talking about the Oracle connector. So that's a really good example there. Again, when we'll talk about the roadmap here in a second, if there's things that aren't on the roadmap, they're topics that we want to kind of talk to people about and kind of help work with them, incubate with them, and do co-build partnership around kind of to help us expand the library. and provide good terms around that. But we'll talk about kind of the roadmap here in a second. But yeah, Marius, back to you.
Before I move on with the demo, let me answer that last question from Daniel Miller. Yes, right, we're using the AWS Cloud Stack. We're using Lambda functions. And you're right, there's a 15-minute timeout. And that's a problem. And so what we do is, and let me show you this. There's an option here on this TI process, P run on cluster. By default, it's false. By default, it's running on Lambda. It means it starts off immediately. That's how we get these like amazing performances of below 10 seconds end to end. But if you have like a very long running load that takes all night, you can set it to true, and then it runs on a cluster. Same code, just without the Lambda constraints. Good, good. Happy about the technical questions.
And when you say about on a cluster, so effectively it can then run for as long as it is needed to run on that cluster. Just to double down on that.
Absolutely, it can run as long as it needs. It can literally forever, and in parallel too. So even on the cluster, we have parallelization. That's one of the things where Atmosphere really shines. That like you could the Salesforce load that we did earlier and the Snowflake load now, you could just run them in parallel. They wouldn't, while they're processed, they wouldn't steal resources from each other because they're running in the cloud. It's quite cool.
That is great.
Okay, so this is Snowflake. It's one of these modern cloud data lakehouses. We're showing Snowflake now, but we have the same functionality implemented for Databricks. We're looking at like a sales table here with some customer columns, category, region, and a value column at the end. There's 100,000 records in this table, and let's load that to TM1. So here on the left, I'm selecting the Snowflake to TM1 function, and then on the right, we get these three variations again: load to cube, to dimension, or to a file. But actually, in production, people wouldn't do this, right? People, go into work and write a SQL query. It's all scheduled. It's all like event-driven, and it's typically done through a TI process. So I already prepared a TI process that is a bit more realistic, right? So we think the way people use Atmosphere in production is that they're using the Atmosphere processes kind of like a bedrock process, like a library process, that you build your own process on top and just call the Atmosphere process. And so in this example, I just implemented two mappings, one for the column names, because we're asking Atmosphere to create a new cube. And so we want all the columns of the data set to be like pretty and nice. And then also we are asking Atmosphere to insert the elements if they don't already exist. So if Atmosphere comes across a new category or a new product, then it should just create it and it should insert it under the all consolidation. So that's a small mapping that we can, define in TI. Can come from a cube, obviously, or user-driven or based on attributes. You name it. And then you pass that with your TI execution. So this one will take a little bit longer, like 20-ish seconds, but it'll create like 6 or 7 dimension with all the elements, and it'll create the cube, and it'll populate the cube with data. And down here at the bottom, this is the two quite interesting arguments: p auto create and p increment. So p increment is obviously important if the same tuple comes more than once, and auto create is what asks Atmosphere to create a cube.
So Marius, we were talking yesterday on our call around diagnosing and performance tuning and stuff. And one of the things we were talking about was collecting data on the performance of these things. So I'm assuming somewhere in Atmosphere you have the ability to actually see how long these things are running and where they're running and what's taking the most amount of time and so on and so forth. Correct?
Absolutely correct. we've got that in the right granularity. Let me show you the cube, and then I'll show you the stats and how to access them. So this is the group that was just created directly from Atmosphere, and it has like 100,000 leaf cells, and then it has all the dimensions created as we specified. So here you could switch to a specific region or customer and just use it as your kind of staging cube. And I think the idea here is that, again, this is most convenient, I think, if you're using this as your staging cube. In production, you probably don't need to create cubes all the time, right? This makes for a nice demo and prototype. Steve, on your question about the stats. So here in the back to the Arc add-in, that is a window into Atmosphere. We have another tab that is the usage history, and in this tab, you can see all historical executions with the stats. So in our case, the last two entries from the top is a Snowflake to TM1 and Salesforce to TM1. And then you could see for each one when it was invoked, when it was started, and how long it took, and also the breakdown between extraction and load. So this could help to find a bottleneck.
That's a really good point there. Oh yeah, and just want to kind of like, Steve, yeah, please across to you here. And want to kind of like double down here, like, there's obviously that comment there from Marius that this is Arc is a window into Atmosphere. This is Arc is a development tool that's obviously available. You can download it from the Cubewise website. Super easy to use, download and install and start developing with your models. And of course, you can do similar but different things as a workspace is a window into Arc as well, right? So we're just kind of as we kind of touched on before, Cubewise developers have a bit of a tendency to kind of use Arc, which is fantastic because of the productivity benefits there. But again, Workspace is a fantastic tool as well, which enables you to kind of get to the similar but different kind of rich data and Atmosphere functions. But sorry, Steve, I just jumped in there.
Yeah, that's okay. Thanks, James. So this is awesome, Marius, right? Because the data that you have here, this gives you even more information than you would probably get from a normal TI process natively, right? Showing the specific extract, transformation, and load time. You have to sort of break that out manually, right? And I don't know, Nico, we talked a little bit yesterday around sort of like the Rush TI Pro component, right? I mean, I think that by taking some of this data, it would really help you to be able to sort of push the ability to be able to extend out your performance and increase your performance by leveraging Rush TI Pro, correct?
For sure. Yeah, and who cannot tell that you can actually use Rush TI Pro to call Atmosphere functions? So that is right. That's a whole suite. So I could actually use Rush TI Pro to call Atmosphere functions, and that Rush TI Pro could run from Atmosphere. So this is why we have this approach, right? This architecture in mind. How could we put it in a way? Everything is really atomic for us, and it's super easy to deploy, to use, and that we focus a lot in the fact that this has to be a service. It has to be a service for the developer, and it has to be a service for the person that pays for it, because they can actually see everything, right? Like it happens in the cloud, in Atmosphere, as the name puts it, but there you have it. It's much clearer than even if you're running on-prem.
On the clarity, I just wanted to add that you can also access logs. So especially if something goes wrong, right? If your query doesn't make sense and fails, you find your error message in the logs.
I do have a question there. Maybe it's on the quota side. Is there a limit, or how are limits being assigned?
Yes. So there is. It is incredibly generous. We have 1 million minutes per year runtime, which is ridiculous. It's like 2 or 3 threads running like 24 hours a day, every day of the year. So it's almost unreachable. But we just put something in, right? It's like a fair use kind of clause. And
That's good.
So here on the right, this is the runtime used. So for the current day, I ran like 0.1%. And this is the time, how much of the time has elapsed. So the current month is like almost over because it's 28th of February. So that's by comparison. Your bar on the right shouldn't exceed the bar on the left, but it is almost unreachable technically.
Great question in terms of that again, managing some of these these new innovations, and as you said there, they call out that really good question about the Lambda and the 15-minute timeout and how you kind of you manage that through the clusters, and also kind of like just that visibility into your quota, which is an important kind of aspect, like similarly but different to when we're talking about Watson X, which is a bit more similar consumption-based license structure, right? So it's a bit of it is a change to how like planning analytics is licensed, whereas by users or by RAM and things of that nature. Okay, we've got like a couple more minutes to go here, Marius, as we kind of like round the final bend of Innovation Week. Yeah, let's talk about what we have what you have here in terms of the connectors, and there's a lot more than just connectors here. But if you want to kind of like share with the folks on the call what we have here, and also kind of like that as I said, I'll kind of touch on it now. If there's kind of connectors here or data sources that aren't on the list, equally reach out, right? Reach out if you see something here that's of interest, and equally if there is something that is missing that is of interest, we want to talk to you. We'd love to incubate. We'd love to kind of like co-develop something on that. And a number of these have been co-developed with customers across Australia, the UK, and the US. But yeah, Marius, let's kind of talk about this library of connectors that we've been building.
I think the last point that you made is really important, because I don't like to sit down at my desk and build a connector from scratch. It's much better if we build it with a customer for a customer, if the customer helps define the requirements. And this is how some of these connectors were built in close cooperation with the customer. And we've got, I think, roughly 20, depending on how you count. Among them, D365. Workday, SharePoint as well, Azure, blob storage, some really good ones, some really popular ones. And this is what we accomplished within 18 months, including building the platform. And so I think if you're inviting me again next year, I think hopefully we have a larger list to share.
Definitely invited next year, Marius. As this team here on the call definitely is for Innovation Week, and obviously, hopefully we can kind of be sharing some of this further roadmap throughout the year with customers. And obviously, there's any number of great events coming up from Cubewise. You can see that on the Cubewise events page. Whether it's the upcoming, I think it's activities that are happening out of the UK in April. Obviously, the great events that happen over there in your part of the world, in Germany and Switzerland, plus all the great stuff that happens over in France, and obviously Australia is key. So, and then Tech Exchange is going to be a big one, which you'll be joining us there, I believe. So that is great. And let's maybe let's drill into the Rush TI Pro there a little bit, Stephen. Like we talked about that yesterday, and that's got we saw the potential, that there is that potential to kind of again improve that data transfer and movement. I think that's, for me personally, that's kind of a huge plus. But if you have a look at that list, and I guess with Rush TI Pro in mind, like what just to kind of close it out, what's there that kind of really is of interest to you in that connector list?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, the Rush TI Pro one to me is huge, right? It's even something that doesn't require you to change anything within your existing model, right? It just allows you to run what you have today significantly faster, right? And you can watch our webinar yesterday, our Innovation Week presentation yesterday, where Nico did a great job of sort of breaking out the new changes there that provide that to you. I mean, for me though, like I guess the biggest thing as a long-term TM1 developer, planning analytics developer here, right? Like the ability for this to expand with future capabilities and things that aren't even on the list that I can think about, right? The NetSuites of the world, the Workivas, Workday, as somebody put in the chat there, right? That's really in some respects, the greatest level of risk management an organization can kind of take on as it relates to sort of their integration points, right? Because you don't know where you're going to go in the future, right? You love your planning analytics environment, but as we see all the time in the consulting world, you move from one ERP to another ERP to cloud this, cloud that, right? And by developing within a function-based platform such as Atmosphere, it gives you the ability to sort of limit what you would have to do in the event you decided to make a change from one place to the next, right? And so it really gives you the ability to scale sort of across any number of cloud applications. Kind of back to your point from Monday, right? The multi-cloud universe, not just planning analytics, but all of the ERPs as they're pushing out into the cloud. So if I had to sort of rank them for me, it would be RushTI Pro, and then it would probably be the flexibility to add new ones as they come up. So.
Nice, nice answer there. And I think that's a really good call out. Like as we talked about RushTI Pro yesterday, the ability to kind of introduce that into your existing application, and as Nicholas, you were talking about that, we don't want to be agents of change. Yeah, we want to kind of come in and do the best we can with what you have, and recycle, re-engineer, rejuvenate what you have. I mean, what are your thoughts there? RushTI is something that you're exceptionally well versed on, and then have a lot of experience on. But yeah, you kind of add to that, please?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, what we did with RushTI Pro is essentially take it a bit more to the next level. I can share a bit of that. 1 second. Here. So yeah, I mean, one of the key things that we focus on is try to re-engineer everything on the back end, but nothing on the front end in a way, so that the compatibility is there. So whoever uses RushTI today and has their own task files, the ones that you have today, those are completely compatible with the new version. So that's great. It's just much more efficient to run. So this is a simple example of and again, using Bedrock weight processes, so you can have an idea. But the way RushTI handled the parallelization and the dependencies in the past was through levels, which could manage parallel execution, but the levels themselves were sequential. So that sort of posed a bit of a limitation. With the new version, we actually got away from it. We introduced something different in levels called DAGs, which we don't have to get into. But for any of you familiar with Airflow and parallel processing and dependency management, that's exactly what we baked into the new version of RushTI. And in this case, it's going to be, it's exclusive to Atmosphere for the moment. And as you can see here in this case, for a specific process, you can get up to like 50% faster. So the exact same task file, the same dependencies, everything the same, but with a new way of managing parallelization, you can get significant gains. In here, I have the proof of it. If we want to get so that nobody calls me out on this. If you see, it's the exact same thing with the RushTI Classic, the new RushTI Pro. You manage things in 19 seconds. Now it's 8 seconds. So we're really excited about this, not only because of the RushTI Pro in itself, but what I was mentioning, putting this in conjunction with Atmosphere and what you can now integrate and the data you can move and how you can actually think about a true data pipeline using Atmosphere by getting things from Databricks, getting your master data from Snowflake, and loading all of that through an orchestrator like this. It's just massive. I mean, the way that what you can do now, it goes beyond what I think we were used to. I wouldn't say like 10 years ago. I would say like 3 years ago, 2 years ago.
And do you want to just touch on, and as you said, it's good to kind of show that evidence is critical here. That this is, we are seeing significant kind of improvements here with this innovation, and there's a couple of ways we're kind of achieving that. And we are, you're kind of like jumped into a couple of big sites recently, and you just want to kind of touch on some of those process improvements that you saw. because sometimes it's almost unbelievable how much we can kind of improve the performance of applications at times.
Yeah. I mean, again, we've implemented in Russia even the classic version in many customers that were, to replace processes that were taking literally hours. I would say, look, to quote one, was 4.5 hours. Now we're down to 4 minutes, and 10 hours to just 8 minutes. So it will depend a lot on what you were trying to do and how much you were using parallelization. But this is generally the way everywhere we go when we are seeing a struggle on the performance side, on loading data or managing the processes. This is going to be key for you to gain more performance. And along with Rush AI Pro and Atmosphere, you can actually start using this as your data pipeline to manage your entire orchestration of data into TM1.
And I think that's fantastic kind of stats there. And I think I would kind of say that getting those down to like 4 minutes, and then kind of what you want to do is where the time allows, keep chipping away at that, because the faster these kind of the data movement, the data pipeline can exist within Planning Analytics, the better chance that the end user are going to have a better user experience as well. Often you kind of go into a site, and then one of the complaints is, the system is locking up for X amount of hours a day, or the overnight loads take X amount of time, and the more we can compress that processing time, the more time the users can kind of get into the system and use that great system that you've developed. Use that business logic, run their reports, and be quick and nimble with their analytics. And ultimately, they're our customers, and they're your customers, are the end users of your system. And you want to give them a fantastic experience, because by doing that, that increases their trust in the system, and it also increases their adoption and just the kind of the general positive vibe about planning analytics in your organization. So just to kind of put it all together about why we think, and I personally think this is such an important topic of always kind of looking to kind of, it can never be fast enough, effectively, is what I like to say to our teams, to keep them on their toes on that front. All right. And thank you, Nicholas, for jumping in on that here. And I think we're gonna wrap up here. There's been some really great questions in the chat, and thank you very much for those. And I guess, Marius, this was the global launch of Atmosphere. Anything you'd like to say in closing here before I kind of do a final wrap? Put you on the spot.
Well, it was. I think launching and like incubating in the US was great. With a lot of customers in the US over the last 12 months, that was great. And I like the spirit, the pioneering spirit that the team and the customers had. That was great. I think we got something really good. I'm looking forward to push this forward.
Excellent. Yeah, nicely said. It's going to be a great year ahead with Atmosphere, and working with your people on the line and people who are watching this recording back. A big thank you to everyone who's participated in Cubewise Innovation Week 2025. We had over 1,000+ registrations for the week. It has been a really big success. We look forward to very much being here again next year for Innovation Week 2026. So it's going to be a blast. And as I said at the top of the call, if you do have the opportunity to be in Boston for Think in May, please reach out. Let's talk. It would be great to kind of catch up with you, a few of you there. And equally, if you have the opportunity to be at Tech Exchange in Orlando in October, please reach out, and great to see you there. I know that's a little bit of a US-centric angle. I know there's like lots of other great activities happening globally, whether it's in Sydney, London, and in Paris, over in Munich, in Germany. There's a great TM1 community there in Germany. Fantastic. So looking forward to Cubewise working with you throughout the year. And just a big thank you for a great week. And thank you, Stephen, Marius, and Nicholas, for making this a fantastic session today. So on that note, I hope everyone has an excellent rest of their day, and see you again next year. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.